Hi there. Welcome to The PrevenTable, the podcast giving you a seat at the table with conversations about the intersection of alcohol, drugs, and mental health in everyday lives. Take a seat and join us.
Hi there. Welcome to another episode of The PrevenTable. As you know, and as I say pretty much every episode, but it's still true that we could not do any of this without Hubbard Radio for giving us this space and just sort of all of the back end support. It's a huge deal and we're really grateful. Just really grateful for the ongoing support. Speaking of being grateful, so we are officially in the final countdown, right? We were singing the song before, like the final countdown. So with me today is Jenny Armbruster. Welcome, Jenny.
Hello, Nichole.
So for those people who don't know, my last day as executive director is coming up on the 30th of June, which is in just a couple of days. And as I step out of that role, you are going to be stepping in.
As Interim Executive Director, July 1st. So poor Prevent+Ed will have no one for like
a day.
A Sunday. I hope nothing happens.
Yeah, so hopefully nothing happens on the 31st, okay? So I'm just going to, just kind of cut to the chase. So some people think this is not a peaceful transition of power and that you have somehow masterminded this whole thing to push me out and you step in. And to that, what say you?
I fancy myself pretty good at strategic planning. I've been working on this for years. No, I say that, I am probably the most happy and most sad all at the same time for you and for this transition. And, I'm willing to take the role, but it is not something that I was looking and seeking to do and not something that was on my 2024 bingo card.
I don't think any of this shit was on her bingo card.
Right.
So we'll talk more about that in a few minutes. But I want to talk now. I want people to get to know you. Okay. Because you and I have worked alongside each other for over 16 years. We always describe it that we had parallel paths, right? Where I was on the school-based side and you were on the community side. My master's is in public health. You are a counselor. Give us your credentials. You've got a lot of letters.
Right. So I have my license in counseling, license in professional counseling, LPC. I have the Certified Reciprocal Prevention Specialist, which is a
CRAPS.
Right, the CRAPS. Right. It's an international credential around prevention services. I have held other credentials through the Missouri Credentialing Board prior to getting my official license in counseling. So, yeah, my background was and has been in psychology and counseling. And, I thought I wanted to be a counselor when I grew up, but I'm still trying to figure all that out.
Well, when you figure out what you want to be when you grow up, let me know.
Okay.
But before you even came to NCADA Prevent+Ed, you worked at Children's Division, right?
Right. So when I finished my undergraduate in psychology,
Truman
State University,
okay.
go
right.
Bulldogs. I moved back home to St. Louis, and it's where I lived my entire life other than my stint in Kirksville. And I came home, young and thinking I was going to, save the world, change, help all these people. And my first big girl job was with the Division of Youth Services, actually. So working with young men who were in a juvenile justice system. And so I worked at a residential home in Hillsborough for young men.
Shout out Jeffco.
Right. Go Jeffco. And it was fascinating work. I really enjoyed the work. And I also was young and didn't think that I had anything else to do but focus on like how great I was going to be in this career I was going to develop. And I worked myself like crazy. I mean, you can imagine being
the burnout there is for real.
Yeah, a state-run 24-hour residential facility. No joke, there were times I'd work multiple shifts because somebody would call out and here I am like all eager. Hey, I'll stay early. I'll take on another shift. I'll cover this. I'll cover that. And I was asked to be a supervisor of one of the units where I thought, well, wow, that's just because I'm so amazing, right? Looking back, it's because I'm a sucker and I was showing up and I was, trying and And I was there. And so
you are a sucker. Everyone thinks I'm the sucker, but I think you might be more of a sucker than I am.
Truly. I was like, yes, I'm going to do this. And at the age of 25, like I was physically ill, like not because of anything other than like exhaustion, where it really took a toll on me. And I mean, it was burnout to the utmost definition. And I knew that I wasn't going to be able to continue to do that anymore. So I stepped away from there and really was looking at what else. And I started working at Children's Division because transferring from one state agency to another is usually less stressful and healthier.
Question mark?
Yeah, question mark is, but no, then I was at Children's Division, also in Jeffco for several years. And when I was in that role, one day they were starting a family drug treatment court. And so this was really focused
this was a
long time ago. We won't talk about how old we are, but it was a long time ago.
And that's when I was working at the health department doing the meth coalition.
Yeah, I mean, it might have even been before that, when I started there. So this family drug treatment court program starts in Jefferson County, and we had cases and caseworkers, and I remember my supervisor kind of at a meeting of all of our caseworker unit that day said, oh, well, they're starting this new program at the court. They're looking for a designated caseworker.
Oh, wow.
Anyone want it? And I raised my hand. I was like, does that mean I get rid of my current caseload? Because, sometimes there's just people that you're working with that you kind of hit a wall with. Right. And my supervisor at the time said, well, yeah, you'll have to because you'll be transferring. And I said, yep, sign me up. That's what I want to do. And I've told other people before, like, that's how I really, got started working in drugs, because I then became involved with this family drug treatment court and working with a caseload of families who children had been removed related to substance use concerns. And began to see this other side of it, really the pure devastation of it, but then also how families can be reunified and what, now I know is like treatment and all of this whole continuum, how this works. And it was really fascinating and interesting to me.
Because this is about 20 years ago. So a lot has changed.
A lot has changed.
Right.
A lot has changed. I mean, even the language, I wouldn't have even used those same words sitting around a staffing table at that treatment court program 20 plus years ago. So, but yeah, but that was also hard work, working foster care and children, and the impact of substances on adults and their families is no joke.
Because at that time, really, meth was taking hold of Jefferson County, other counties, but Jefferson County, and we were looking at, how can we keep children safe that are being removed from meth labs or places where meth had been made, how to get families into treatment, but there really wasn't a ton of treatment back then.
Right.
Or MAT, really.
I can't tell you, I can't count on my number of fingers how many times I was in parents' homes working towards reunification, and then you get a notification the next day that there was an active meth lab in their home. And it's heartbreaking because you're like, I just was sitting there talking with them, and things seem to be progressing in such a positive way. And as we know, the brain disorder and the other things associated with substance use just continued to make it really difficult for a lot of families. So how
the hell did you get to NCADA? PrevenTable?
Yeah. So working in there, again, that's hard work. And it was starting to kind of take a toll. I had actually transferred from Jefferson County to the St. Louis County office. Again, I just kind of thinking, okay, maybe a change will help prevent some burnout on this. And I was working at the St. Louis County office, and we would have monthly lunch and learns where we'd bring a sack lunch and we'd come into a conference room, and somebody from the community would come and share a resource or some information about something. And that month, Dan Duncan, who used to be at NCADA, Prevent+Ed, walked in the room and was talking about this organization and this prevention work. And I was like, whoa. There truly is a whole other side to all of this. And that night I went on the website, and they were hiring, Prevent+Ed, NCADA was hiring for let's see if I remember the title, a community prevention specialist, maybe?
Yeah.
So basically
right.
What we now call community strategist, working with community coalitions. And I thought, that's kind of interesting. And so I applied, and I was hired, and the rest is history.
And so the rest is history indeed, because really then you became kind of a line staff doing community work, helping community coalitions, provide technical assistance. And then you became a supervisor.
Again, that sucker was written across my forehead.
Right,
but
exactly.
I just thought I was changing the world. Right,
Right,
yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
And then, PRC, known at that time as the Regional Support Center, was really growing pretty rapidly. And as we've discussed on this podcast before, like Missouri has a really robust community prevention kind of strategy and plan, and they've divided the state into 10 regions. And so you became the head of our region. And then you were about to go on maternity leave, I think.
Which time? So there were 3 of those maternity
right.
leaves.
No, I was thinking when Howard asked you if you wanted to take on more responsibility right before your maternity leave. Or maybe it was during it or something.
Right. Well, yeah, because kind of again the life of Jenny Armbruster. So when I started at NCADA, I was engaged, planning marriage, thinking about
We're not giving
the future.
your husband Dan a shout out because
his
head cannot get any bigger, Dan.
He is the face of Prevent+Ed.
He says. Yes, look at bus stop ads near you. He's been in our talk about it. He has quite an ego. He thinks he needs a red carpet rolled out for him. Yes. He's like Mr. Narcan.
He's been doing trainings. Yeah, he is fully invested in the organization as well. But no, so back to me.
Back to you. Sorry,
let's talk about me.
We're not talking about Dan anymore.
When I started at Prevent+Ed, I was in a master's program for my master's in counseling. But with the job change, I thought, well, I'll put that on pause. I had really kind of a couple courses in my practicum left to do to get my master's in counseling education. And, I didn't know how that would work in a new workplace and all those things.
We didn't reimburse for it. We
right.
still don't.
And, and I didn't know what I was going to. But so I was like, and by that time, I had thought I was going to be a school counselor. So that's kind of where I was pursuing that role as a master's in education counseling. And like I said, I was a practicum and 2 classes away and realized I didn't really want to be a school counselor. So I wasn't sure what I was going to do with this. So I thought, well, I'll just put that on the back burner for now, start this new job, plan a wedding, do a wedding, and then we'll figure it out. So then a wedding happened, a new job's going well. As you said, like I'm getting more invested and kind of growing with the organization. 1 kid happens, 2 kids happen, and I get a call from, my master's program is through Missouri Baptist, and I get a call from there, and they said, did you know that these credits will expire at some point?
You're like,
I'm like, they what? Like,
excuse me?
And so I was informed that, you either like need to do something with these or finish, or, they will expire, and,
that's nuts.
It's all for nothing. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, now it's time. So 2 kids under the age of 3 at home. And
you're insane.
I'm like, it's time to finish this then. So I moved forward with that. So this was like 2012-ish, 2013, and finished my master's program. And then NCADA Prevent+Ed is growing in our adolescent counseling work, and I have a master's in counseling. And I say, I think I want to, do more with this, and I can, and I've elevated, my education status, and I'm pregnant again. So so by the time we received the funding to start what is now called Guide It, I was also heading out on maternity leave, and we were also moving to our current location.
Oh yeah, that was super fun. Yeah, this was what, 2013, 2014?
August 14th, 2014 is when my youngest was born, and it was moving day for Prevent+Ed, and
I blocked that out of my memory.
Here's a funny story. So Kristen, who I know has been a guest on the podcast as well, in the weeks leading up to moving, I every day would put everything on my desk into a box and leave a roll of tape on top of it. And Kristen's job was, if I don't come back the next day, to tape up that box so it gets moved. And then every morning I'd waddle back in, unpack my stuff back onto my desk, and sigh really deep and sit back down. So so the day that everyone else was having to move boxes and figure out what goes where, I was giving birth. And then I came back from that leave, and settled in my new office and took on, really kind of helping to build the Guide It program and the counseling work at Prevent+Ed too, and continued to shift into other roles.
And so when Howard Weissman announced that he was retiring, you and I tell this story a little bit differently, but I think it ends up pretty much the same, which is essentially there were people who were external candidates looking at the role, and neither of us really wanted the role because you had, a lot of other things going on, a la 3 children, and I just didn't want to do it. And I was single at the time, I think. I don't know. I'm trying to remember. But I think I was. And I think I didn't want to be like a young single executive director because in my brain that just didn't seem very cool, and it just seemed very stressful. And then I thought I would just never find anyone. And so I didn't want it. You didn't really want it. And then we kind of started reflecting on how our lives might be a little bit different if some of these external folks took over. And so we went across the street, I think, to our place where we always go when the shit hits the fan. And we had a conversation about who wants to do it, who could do it, and then what the role of the other person would be.
Right. And I think I said not it first.
I think you did. I think you put your hand on your forehead and you said, not it. I was like, that's not fair. And then you're like, but I have kids. And I'm like, but that's not fair. But I think what we agreed on was that if I was going to interview for the position, I would interview hard. I would, I think like you, I'm pretty determined. So if I was going to try to do it, I was hell-bent on getting it, but that I would really need and want your support in a real role, not in just a title, not in a, oh yeah, she's number 2. Because what does that really mean? We really wanted to parse out what your role was because, we've been working together for so long that people think we're the same. We are not the same.
Oh, absolutely not.
We have, first of all, people think we hang out on the weekends. I mean, I would love to hang out with you, but you never call me.
We're not even friends on Facebook.
We're not even friends on Facebook. No. We don't really hang out, but we have fun when we're out of town at a work conference. But we are very different. And I think what we both realized very early on, once I went for the role and got the role, and you said, okay, I got you. I'm Team Nichole. What can I do? Then we were able, I think, pretty quickly to carve out your strengths versus my strengths and what you like to do, what I like to do, what are natural talents of yours that are hard for me, and vice versa. So I think that worked out really well. And some of the things that I think you're really good at are the big picture, the vision, the strategic, it's just so crazy it might work kind of things, whereas I'm more cautious. I am slower to move. I think I definitely have a bias towards school-based prevention. I think your bias is definitely more towards the larger, more macro types of things, with community, with just thinking about how to make a more sizable impact, whereas I have a tendency to think more narrow and focused. Would you agree with some of that?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, slightly different versions of how it came to be maybe, but we knew that we both had skills. And we both, I think, also really knew that we didn't want to leave the agency.
No, we were not. Neither of us were ready to leave the agency.
And so, yes, I mean, really thinking about those parallel paths and what we both kind of came into the organization with and have become better experts at over the years. But then we had this opportunity to say, okay, then how do we take this to the next step and do that together? I didn't know that it was going to be a role called the Deputy Executive Director.
We got you a badge.
I was like, yeah, this is made up. I don't even know what this is. When I tell the story, I'm like, and then Nichole tricked me and came in and was like, and now we have a Deputy Executive Director. But the spirit of it was exactly what you described, that we were going to have to continue to work together, that There were parts of the organization that we both were passionate about, skill sets we both had, visions for ways we could grow and continue the work but while they were different, they weren't like conflicting.
Right. They were aligned. Mm-hmm. We are different people. We
Absolutely.
have different thoughts and different ways of executing those thoughts. But I think that for the most part, we have been very aligned. Mm-hmm. But we're also sort of like parents, where if we are disagreeing, we are doing that behind closed doors. And then when we come out, when we open the door, then we're presenting a united front, which I appreciate.
Well, and I think, when I was just thinking about that too, it's funny because you're right. A lot of people do think like we're besties or something all the time. And that's not true. Like in our lives, I mean, of course, because you work with somebody for 16 and a half years, we know each other, but we're not that type of friendship that we are like hanging out every weekend or every evening or, even know what's going on every weekend or every evening in each other's lives. But we also, I think that our friendship in that way has been successful because we both know how to like be adults at work.
Right.
And so we probably wouldn't be really great friends because we can be really good adults at work and know that we can disagree.
Totally.
And that doesn't mean that somebody's right or wrong or that somebody's out to get somebody or that we can have a conversation around it and we can maybe even continue to push if we feel like we need to push or know that, okay, well, maybe not right now or be able to present more information to each other. Like we've been able to have a mature working relationship in that way that I think has, as far as I think, has been very healthy.
I think so.
Yeah.
Which is why it's so funny to both of us when people are like, Nichole's leaving, Jenny's stepping in as interim. What's really happening? And we're like, well, what's happening is there is change, and this is what a succession plan looks like. Mm-hmm. We are working a plan, and a plan is, because I keep saying, and I know everybody like rolls their eyes, but like if I win the lottery or get hit by a car tomorrow, you are stepping in. Right. That's what's supposed to happen. You might not want to, you might not like it, but that's what that plan is.
Yes.
And so when I came to you a couple months ago, and you were the first person, even before my mom and sister, mm-hmm. Sorry, mom and sister, but to know that I was really contemplating a move, I came to you first and I said, like, this is what I'm thinking. And you looked at me and said, basically, like, I'm ready and I want it.
Mm-hmm.
Because you weren't ready and didn't want it 6 years ago. But you're ready and want it now.
Yeah, I used this analogy the other day with somebody that 6 years ago, I was like, whoa, I have a plate that's this big and it's this full and I have no room on it and I'm not really interested in another plate right now. Where now I'm like, bring on the turkey platter. Let's go. Like,
let's go.
Because the seasons of life have changed.
Totally.
My children are no longer in diapers. I don't have that to worry about. Now, is there other things? Yes, they're teenagers now, which, as you know from this podcast, brings a whole other host of concerns and worries. But it's a different season of life. And so I am, and I feel like I'm in like just more understanding. And talk about being grateful from the beginning of the podcast. I've learned from you and I've been able to watch and have an example of not knowing all the answers, figuring things out, leading, caring, and making it happen. Mm-hmm. And so it's given me some knowledge, some confidence, and I feel like is it ever the perfect time? Probably not, but
is there ever,
right. Never, ever a perfect time for most things. So,
is there ever a perfect time for me to pick up and move to a different state? No, there is no perfect time.
No perfect time for this.
And is there a perfect time for you to be like, yep, I'm ready? Like, are you ever ready? It's like our parents used to say, like, if you wait to have kids until you're ready, you'll never have kids. Well, are you ever really ready to step into a leadership role? No. Did you 6 years ago? Yes. Right. Are you now? Mm-hmm. Yes. I'm going to give you some rapid fire questions. Okay. So these are like one or two answers, one or two words. Okay. Besides hanging out with your children, what do you like to do for fun? Because you mom.
I'm
you're a
mom. But like be outside, like being on water, like a lake or a river. Like I love a good float trip or, going on a boat ride or even just swimming. Like, yes, like being outside and summer and water that's like when I'm like, this is my happy place.
Okay. Greatest accomplishment so far at PrevenTed?
Wow. That's a hard one. I'm going to go with pushing for the Certified Peer Specialist program. There's many others, but that one I feel like was one that
what do you mean pushing? Was I a little skeptical?
A little, like, this is something different and new for us. And I'm like, but it's the direction we have to go. And I mean, it really started with even starting to contract with and hire peers even before we were ready to like dive into the deep end. But figuring it out and, so many people to thank. I am not taking credit for all of its success, but really, again, having that vision that this is what the community needs. This is a model that really can work, I believed in, and then figuring out the right pieces together to make it happen.
Cool. How about guilty pleasure movie?
Oh, man. Like Adam Sandler, Big Daddy.
Okay. Okay.
Like a good comedy, yeah.
Okay. Why don't you like to ride in the passenger seat?
I get car sick and nauseous. It's bad.
Okay. All right. And like, no skeletons or anything, but like what's been the hardest moment at PrevenTed? NCADA? There's been a lot, but what's been hard?
Having to make tough decisions about staffing. So, when we've had to let people go or, help people go, that, I think it's hard because in the moment it never feels good. And then looking back, you like still question it. Like, was that the right thing to do?
What is the first thing that you're going to do as Interim Executive Director?
Oh, wow. Move into your office.
There you go. Okay. Yeah, all right. That's a good one. Okay. And really like what, and this can be longer than, a sentence, but I think a lot of people are wondering like, what are we going to see from Jenny? Mm-hmm. What are we going to see? Like, is the organization going to change? What are we going to see?
That's a great question. And I think that we'll see much of the same, especially initially. I'll need some time to kind of like sort through and sift through things and figure out what I still want to hold on to because it's what I'm passionate about and love. And what are things that you've done, Nichole, that maybe I have to do just because that comes with the role, or what might be great for other people within the organization. I think that what we'll see is some time to kind of figure things out, but I think we'll still continue to see a really strong Prevent+Ed, and we'll see an organization that's going to grow and adapt to trends and things happening, and I'm excited. I think that we have, I feel like we're finally like rebounding from COVID and fully like finally getting back to our stride and we're ready to like take off again. Oh shoot, I just totally lost my train of thought and it was a good question.
This is what happens when you don't write anything down, but it was a really good question and I forget it. It's fine. Whatever. How much are you going to miss me?
So much.
That was not my question. I was just kidding. I remembered what it was. But what's going to happen with the podcast?
What's going to happen with the podcast?
Because that seems to be the $1 million question.
That is
so
a great
what's going to
question.
happen at least through the rest of the year?
The rest of the year, Nichole has made a plan and a commitment that you're going to continue to be the host because you have kicked butt at this.
Thank you.
The people love you, and I can't take you away from them yet. So Nichole is going to finish out season.
This is season 4.
Yep. And then we'll decide what happens with season 5. I mean, I could maybe do it. I can see if I like this idea, or maybe we'll see if there's someone else that pops up as, always really wanting to have hosted a podcast and never had the opportunity. Maybe we'll have some guest hosts. The future is is whatever we want it to be at this point. But I know for sure for season 4, you'll continue to hear from Nichole and episodes with Nichole and guests. And then you'll hear more of me in season 5 and maybe some other people too.
Very cool. And my last question really for you is, how excited are your kids and Dan? Like, are they excited for you? Are they kind of like pooping their pants? Like, do they care? I mean,
I think
how
they
are they
care.
feeling?
I don't know that they think it'll be really that much different.
Okay.
And
it might not be, because you're doing a lot right now.
I mean, I've gotten some questions like, well, will that just mean you're at work even more? I'm like, maybe some days.
Maybe.
So, I don't know that they think that it's going to be extremely different. And for their day-to-day life, it might not be.
Mm-hmm.
Other than, maybe I won't be able to drive them quite as many places or something. But no, they're excited for me. They're happy for me. It's weird. I was actually thinking about this morning. My kids, their whole lives, I've worked at Prevent+Ed. So it just doesn't even seem like that. Like, I think if I were moving a different place, they'd be like, wait, what? What is this? How is it? But Prevent+Ed is just where I work their whole lives.
They quote stats and they make themselves at home. And
they know our staff and they know our programs. And, they are always
Your son
promoting
helped
us.
me move. Mm-hmm. Like they are just there on billboards.
Right,
like
they're in it. So
they're in it.
I think that they're just
They've assembled
okay.
tobacco merchant kits. Like they're ready.
I think they are probably also concerned that I'm going to make them, volunteer more.
Yeah, probably. That will probably happen.
But, it's good for them. So that's okay.
Awesome. You mentioned gratitude. I am so incredibly grateful for the teammate that I have had in you for the last 6 years. But beyond that, right? Because when I was director of prevention, you were director of community. When you were supporting the community coalition that I was working in, like we've been partners. Mm-hmm. And maybe now when I leave, we could friend each other on Facebook.
It's probably appropriate.
Okay.
I'd like to stay in touch, right? No, and I thank you. I mean, thank you for listening to me yell and scream, to telling me I got this, to being vulnerable to yell and scream at me.
Totally.
And I really mean it when you've taught me so much. I know I have my own shoes, but your shoes will be hard to fill too. And I'm very excited for you, though. Like, I'm very happy for you and excited to see your next chapter, too.
You also think I'm a little nuts, which it's fine.
Well, I mean, that hasn't changed in 16 and a half years.
And that, my friends, is why I love Jenny Armbruster, because we can keep it real. We do, I think, respect each other as working professionals, as strong women, as people who wear a lot of hats, as daughters, as all of these things. But really, you just make me laugh. So I really appreciate that. And I'm so excited about the next chapter of Prevent+Ed.
Mm-hmm.
Change the name again if you want. I don't really give a shit.
No, that was more than I want to tackle.
But I am so incredibly geeked about what's going to happen in the next phase of the organization. And I know that you have a lot of big ideas. And while some people that might make scary, they might be scared or whatever, like I'm like genuinely stoked to see like what's going to happen. So thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thanks for finally inviting me to be a guest.
If you like what you heard, please consider rating, reviewing. We'd love a review on this episode, right?
Yeah, that'd be fun.
Or actually subscribe. That's a really huge deal for us, too. Thank you very much. Thanks, Jenny.
Thank you, Nichole.
Thanks for joining us at The PrevenTable, brought to you ad-free by Prevent+Ed. Prevent+Ed works to reduce or prevent the harms of alcohol and other drug use through education, intervention, and advocacy. Please visit their website at PreventEd.org. Like what you heard? Rate, review, and subscribe to stay up to date with what we are serving on The PrevenTable.